Good.
Good morning, coalition of concerned Republicans and Republicans across the state of Florida. What an amazing snapshot in time we have here. We are in the middle of a gubernatorial election cycle, which is quite contentious. On Friday, the arguments closed in the legal lawsuit filed by gubernatorial candidate Jay Collins against gubernatorial candidate James Fishback in an attempt to keep James Fishback off the ballot. Fishback, represented by the Sabatini law firm, achieved a ruling on Monday stating that even though he voted in Washington, D.C., and I believe filed a homestead tax exemption in Washington, D.C., the judge in the bench hearing decided that he did not break his residency. The requirement is 7 continuous years of residency in Florida in order to qualify to run for governor. So the court supported, and congratulations to the Sabatini law firm and to Fishback for defeating this attempt by Jay Collins to keep Fishback off the ballot. So that's the whole gubernatorial thing going on there. We also have some really important congressional races going on. Obviously, in Lake County, we are Congressional District 6, which is in the western side of Lake County. I'm going to say the northwestern corner of Lake County. And then we have Congressional District 11, which is South Lake County, all the way up through the villages, including all of Sumter County. And there's a little corner in Southwest Orange County that are included in Congressional District 11. And that's another very interesting race. We've talked quite a bit about it on the broadcast here. So all that's going on. And, that's just 2 examples. And of course, this Fishback thing is another, interesting piece. But so this is really critical. Who we send to Congress this trip is going to be really, really important, right? This is the tail end of Donald Trump's supposedly last term, Trump being termed out as a president of the United States. So who we send to Washington, D.C. matters a lot. And we have a lot going on in the world. Ukraine war is taking a completely different profile. The Iranian conflict is taking a different profile based on what's going on in Ukraine. Very complicated story, so we are not going to get into it deeply. But we have a lot going on. And then on Sunday night, the Florida Republican Assembly had a special convention for the purpose of considering expelling its statewide leader, Lou Morin. So we're going to talk about that today. And now I want to bring Chuck Benoit on. And Chuck is going to put the Lake County Board of County Commissioners meeting on the screen solely to demonstrate to the audience that this is on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com and then just go to the search bar in YouTube, not in your browser, but in YouTube, and enter Lakefront TV with no spaces, search that, you'll see that every time there's a commission meeting, it live streams on Lakefront TV on YouTube. So people can watch these commission meetings. And right now, what you're seeing is that data center companies are making their case to the Board of County Commissioners of why the commissioners should allow data centers in Lake County, knowing that County Commissioner Anthony Sabatini has already passed an ordinance stating that data centers are banned from Lake County. So these data center companies are addressing it with their billions of dollars of money. So they're in there right now making their case. You're watching it now of why these data center companies think that data centers or advocate that data centers are good for Lake County. That's what you're watching on the screen right now. But this is really important, and it's a challenge for Chuck and me, because we know that on Tuesday mornings, we're always going to conflict with these county commission meetings, and that's not a good thing for us. You know, we really want to pay attention to what's going on in these county commission meetings. And if we're live streaming over it, then, you know, we obviously can't do both things at the same time. So, Chuck, let's close that up and, you know, get back onto our agenda here. Thank you for that, Chuck. I really appreciate it. Chuck, how about you? What do you think, Chuck? Opening remarks.
Yeah, well, we've talked about a few different things, but our topic of discussion tonight is the absolute insane situation the grassroots Republican organizations find themselves in. It's just amazing. I mean, you know, just a year ago, maybe at least a year ago, I just felt like we had such a strong base. You know, we didn't have the strongest base. We didn't have a strong enough base, but we had a strong base with the Republican Liberty Caucus and the Florida Republican Assembly. I felt like you know, my position as a Republican electorate you know, had a voice, and both of those organizations have really kind of let me down in several different ways. Basically, around, as the way I understand it, the leadership, the state wide leadership, have just decimated my confidence in especially the FRA, but certainly the Liberty Caucus as well. So we're going to kind of go into that, and I guess we're going to start with the FRA.
Okay. No, well, before we do that,
Yeah.
I just want to add to what you said, that the Republican executive committees are really at the heart of all this, right? I mean, you would think that conservative organizations in the state of Florida would be aligned with the Republican executive committees in every county, but they're not. And that's a big point of contention. And we'll talk more about that too. So yes, I agree 100% that, you know, let's just take it back to the last election cycle, the 2024 presidential election cycle. You know, of course, the FRA was going through problems then, Chuck, if you remember, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. And then, of course, you know, we had Bob White, the leader of the Republican Liberty Caucus, who'd been in charge of that for 10 years, decided that he was not going to run for chairman again. And he would have certainly won if he ran. But that opened the door to a transition of leadership at the Republican Liberty Caucus, which I would suggest has not been good for the Republican Liberty Caucus or the conservative movement here in the state of Florida, Chuck.
Yeah, well, I guess, again, what we've found out, or what we learned as a, you know, from this whole situation of losing the, you know, the current or the past leadership, they left the Liberty Caucus with no money, with no real source of income, and it just, you know, it really did devastate the ability for the RLC to do much.
Well, if you were talking to Bob White right now, he would tell you that dues income was still in place. But I will tell you, which is true, but it's also true that they didn't, at the time of transition, they didn't have an accurate database on who the members were. They had no system by which to post revenues. So nobody really knew who were members and who weren't. So the whole, and you know, the whole accounting system was a debacle. And I don't think anybody on the executive board of the Republican Liberty Caucus would disagree that at the time when Bob White handed over the reins on the Republican Liberty Caucus to Tom Vail, that the financial management side of it was in disarray. And that's true. So that's a big deal. Okay. As you know, I was involved in that, and it takes a pretty strong leader to sort all of that out. And there was other issues as well, you know, because again, you can see there's some similarities here between what was going on with the FRA and what was going on with the RLC, but both organizations struggled to maintain their website, which is critical for a grassroots organization like that. I mean, in politics or in business or whatever, if you, somebody who's interested in your organization, your website is the foundation of that. That is where you post your value proposition. You post the benefits of affiliating with your organization and maybe even points of differentiation. Why is this organization different than other? In this case, we're talking about political grassroots organizations, conservative organizations. So that's your opportunity to explain to the public who you are, what your objectives are, and what makes you different than other organizations that might be in the same space, Chuck. So both organizations have struggled with basically the same issues. And after your comments, Chuck, I'll come back and put some rationale on why that is. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it appears to me. I mean, I guess that what I think the problem is. I think the problem is that everybody wants to be the boss, and they want to make sure that at no point are they going to lose their authority over the organization, and so they've set things up in such a way that if they're gone, everything falls apart.
Well, that's just irresponsible, Chuck. I
I
mean,
believe that.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna add to what you're saying, and I'm gonna say that we live in a world of self-glorification today. You can look at Twitter, X, classic example. Okay, we're all trying to get retweets and views, and we do it on this broadcast as well. We're trying to get views, we're trying to get viewing time on YouTube, or all that, Facebook, trying to get likes, subscribe, shares, comments, all of that, because it influences these these algorithms that basically position your communications they in the rankings so that you will get a little self-esteem, and people will be introduced to your platform, and that you can grow your audience for all the benefits of doing that. So we live in an environment today that focuses on self-glorification. That's what's going on. So, for example, you can take both Lou Morin and Bob White, and they both have done everything in their power to stay in the spotlight for a decade, both. And so, for example, in the FRA case, Lou Morin left executive board seats vacant for, I don't know exactly how long, but I'm going to say minimum 2 years, at least 2 years. There was no executive board. And that meant that Lou Morin with Peter Kourakis could do whatever they wanted with the FRA. And of course, Lou has a lot of strengths, okay? But it just put Lou as with absolutely no guardrails on what he could do with the FRA. So it wound up, because he had so much freedom, that he absolutely grossly offended the presidents of the local chapters by taking a position with a candidate for Congress who is not a naturally born citizen and supports Islamic organizations in Central Florida, which is an absolute contradiction of the value proposition of the Florida Republican Assembly, without even discussing it with anyone in the Republican Assembly organization. So in this particular case, Chuck, as we described earlier, the CD11 race includes a small part, relatively small part of Orange County, but then a large part of Lake County and all of Sumter County. And Lou Morin decided to go to work for $10,000 a month on his payroll, supporter of Islam. without even consulting his foundational Judeo-Christian organization what they think about it. So that is a complete, I don't know how anybody, Chuck, am I overreaching here? Or is this a total disregard for the organization and its leadership? What say you?
Well, I agree that it is a total disregard because, out of Lou Morin's mouth over and over and over again, we talked about Judeo-Christian values. He talked about Judeo-Christian values, the importance of the fundamental, the fundamentality of that for the FRA, and we all know that Islam and Christianity are diametrically opposed. Islam and our Constitution are diametrically opposed, and you can't think that there was any reason to support this guy beyond the fact that you're getting $10,000 a month to do it. And I certainly believe that Lou Morin believes that this man couldn't be elected anyway. So that
Why do
just,
you think that?
well, because he's a Muslim.
But let's walk this out differently. Let's walk this out differently.
Okay, we can do whatever you want there, Mike.
If Lou Morin got what he wanted, then he would have convinced Rick Carlins and Brian Kennedy, the leaders, the presidents of the Lake and Sumter chapters of the FRA, to get on board with him. And if he did, then the FRA in Lake and Sumter County would be doing grassroots electioneering for this guy. And under those circumstances, why do you think candidate Nizam Razak pays Lou Morin 10 grand a month? And oh, by the way, two of the people that voted in the election were also on Razak's payroll. So there's 3 votes.
Yeah, we haven't really addressed that
That's
disciplinary
true, but
action
I'm
yet.
just saying at this
Okay.
point, because with all that going on, he could be a very viable candidate in that race. I mean, these grassroots, and Brian Kennedy in particular, Rick too, but Brian has a really active grassroots campaign where they actually are knocking on doors, distributing literature, making phone calls, working hard, getting signs in the ground, all of that for their candidate, who I'm just going to go ahead and plug it right now, that the Lake County Republican Assembly and the Sumter County Republican Assembly have both endorsed Tim Wilkins for the CD11 seat. So let me just help those guys out a little bit. Because they work so hard and they're so conscientious about their actual value proposition. They're so true to this is what's really disgusting about this whole thing, Chuck, is that you take these amazing, 100% dedicated, totally virtuous and not self-serving individuals, and then you undermine them by utilizing your position as the president of the Florida Republican Assembly to just absolutely trample all over their value proposition. So again, the FRA, if Orange Lake and Sumter FRA chapters would have lined up behind Nizam Razak, he had a good chance of winning.
Yeah, well, I agree with that, Mike. But I also, do not believe that they ever would have, and it
No, that's
seems
right.
odd to me. It seems very odd to me that Lou Morin would not know that.
He did know that.
What he did know what he did know that
Yeah.
the
He knew, well, you know what, Lou Morin, this is what also happens, right? When you get these egotistical leaders like Lou Morin, he honestly entertains in his mind, just like this thing, when you have 21 voting members voting for you to be removed from office, you should resign. Okay? Your leadership team is not behind you. So this is a disservice to the Florida Republican Assembly for Lou Morin to keep his position. Any decent human being would resign. When you got the vast majority of your leadership team doesn't support your presidency, you should resign. But that's not what's happening here. Lou is fighting to keep his mantle as the president of the FRA, despite the lack of leadership from the various chapters. So I'm saying to you, Chuck, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to just speculate that FRA is about to have some. I think they're going to lose some chapters over this, Chuck.
Yeah.
That's what I think, and I think that's
Well,
really bad for the FRA. So I don't know how that benefits Lou Morin.
yeah, well, it doesn't benefit Lou Morin. It doesn't benefit the grassroots cause here in our community anyway. We've kind of alluded to it, but there was a meeting over the weekend with the FRA to have a disciplinary hearing regarding Lou Morin. And they did try to get him removed from office. And as you mentioned, they fell one vote shy of getting that done. There was several concerns regarding Lou Morin, but the primary one was the idea that he chose to support someone without telling anybody else in the organization. And I guess the way I understand it, the FRA never really technically supported Lou Morin. I mean, supported Razak, but certainly resources from the FRA were put into his favor. So the bottom line is that he didn't do anything wrong. I mean, he didn't break any rules. He just broke confidence. That's the way I see it.
Okay, well, you got to first of all, the audience needs to understand that in order to expel an officer from the FRA, you've got to have a 2/3 vote, a 2/3 majority vote. That's a pretty high bar. And as you pointed out, they only missed by one vote to get 2/3 of the membership to agree to expel Lou Morin. So, I don't want to get off topic here, but so that to me, I mean, if I was the leader of an organization and I missed a 2/3 vote by one vote to expel me from my position, I would gladly resign, respectfully resign. But there is no respect in this relationship here. This is all about Lou Morin. And I find that, again, this is, Chuck, let me just take this the next step. Okay. Because really and truly what we're seeing here, and I would suggest in both the RLC situation and in the FRA situation, this is why, how can we expect elected officials to be accountable to voters when the advocates for accountability, the FRA and the RLC, they're not accountable to their members either. So when you leave your organization after a decade of leadership basically broke, and then you inform your executive board in the last meeting of your tenure that every single one of the fundraiser events that have happened over the last 10 years that the executive board members each individually believed were statewide fundraisers, and you inform them in your last meeting that they've never had a statewide fundraiser. All of the Constitution Day dinners were for the benefit of the Brevard chapter, not the state chapter. And to this day, the state Republican Liberty Caucus has never had a fundraiser for the state organization. And they're out raising money to put into a political committee, and the state organization doesn't have a political committee. So when Bob White walks away from the Republican Liberty Caucus, he takes all their PAC money and told them specifically on the final call that this is not their money. And if they want to advocate for candidates or endorse candidates, and they want to put financial funding behind candidates, they've got to go ask permission. The state organization has to ask permission from the Brevard chapter in order to get funding for statewide endorsed candidates of the Republican Liberty Caucus. In my mind, Bob, if you're watching this, I don't want to be adversarial. I don't. But the facts are what they are. This is what they are. So now the state Republican Liberty Caucus has no statewide fundraising apparatus because it's all been done in Brevard since Bob was chairman, 10 years. And they have no PAC. They have no political committee. So they don't, the executive board of the RLC really has no power to help any candidate that they would endorse. So, I mean, these are basically straw men, the equivalent of straw men. These organizations have no resources to get behind their political priorities, Chuck. And if you want to know why the Republican Party of Florida has the ability to steamroll grassroots organizations, we just explained it. Because grassroots organizations in Florida have no resources other than mostly senior citizens volunteering who really don't like canvassing neighborhoods in 95-degree weather in primary season, Chuck.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we did an entire show pretty much on the idea of us having a succession plan. And, we basically made the point that every organization needs one. And I'm not sure if either of these organizations have even begun to sit down and talk about that. But here's, we're down to just a few minutes, Mike, and we haven't really helped our cause. We've certainly thrown a bunch of flares in the air and warnings. What is there a solution to all this? Is there a light at the end of this dark tunnel that we find ourselves in?
Let me just address that. Thank you, Chuck. The succession plan concept lasts about 30 seconds in a statewide executive board meeting for literally every one of these organizations. They do not want a succession plan. They want to coronate a king or queen, and it's all about the leadership. So, there's maybe 3, 4, 5 people on the conservative side around the state of Florida who get the spotlight on them all the time, while other people sow their time and money and networking and advocacy resources into the organization, thinking that they're contributing to something that will influence the legislature and the executive branch in the state of Florida. And reality, that's kind of a bunch of smoke and mirrors right there. So if, and I'm saying to you, Chuck, the cornerstone of where we are, the pivotal cornerstone of where we are right now, if these grassroots organizations would implement succession plans into their bylaws and constitutional governing documents, then that would be a turning of the tide, because it would no longer be about the individual. The individual who becomes the chairman or president of the organization would have a 1-year, 2-year term, and they would be termed out and ineligible for a consecutive term. Okay, and that's what needs to be done. When organizations refuse to do that, and they are refusing to do that, because I presented this to them recently, and they rejected the idea. And we could get into the whole issues-based platform as opposed to candidate-based platform, which is another thing that would be really good for the cause, not necessarily good for the leadership, but good for the movement. And they reject that. So just like asking these grassroots organizations to adopt policies and procedures that put the organization's well-being above the political desires of their leadership is what's needed. And I don't see that happening, Chuck. Yeah. And I hate to say that, but I will. The good news is that there's a couple of new organizations out there. Like, for example, we had Robin Lum on the other day, who founded the Florida League of Republican Voters, and Bob Valenta, who really tried to stay on board with the Florida Republican Assembly. He was on the call Sunday night, started another organization called ARC, A-R-C. So there are new organizations springing up, and I've been involved with both of these individuals who are creating these new organizations, selling succession plans and, programs that would put the organization's interest above the interest of the leadership. So there's a hope that maybe a couple of these organizations will, take to heart what we're saying here. And Chuck, I think it's critical. I think that what you and I are talking about right now is the most important subject matter that a political organization, I don't care what your stripes are, in Florida, you got to put the organization's need first. And if you don't do that, then you're just another politician for sale. And then, you'll basically take on all of the characteristics of the Florida legislature with supermajorities on both sides, and all the cabinet on the Republican side too, which I'm grateful for. I want Republicans in charge, of course, but I would like for them, just like the organizations have to put their organizations first, legislators and executive branch elected officials have to put the people of the state of Florida first, which they do not do.
Right.
So this is a deep cesspool of corruption, Chuck, that needs, honestly, Chuck, the hand of God to fix it.
There you go. Well, we are out of time. I'm going to give you your final comment.
That was it, Chuck. I don't need
That's
a closing
it. No
comment.
more final
That was
comment.
my closing comment.
Well, there you go. Well,
you close. You give us a closing
thank
comment.
you, Mike Levine, and thank you all for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please continue to follow us on Facebook and X at Restore Our Rep 76. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic ROAR. Please like and share the program. And remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump. And God bless America.